In this chapter, we're going to be discussing basic backgrounds as part of an overall discussion of CSS as a design tool. Now, this should look pretty familiar. We've used this a couple of times, just setting the background to red. But when we're setting a background of red, what we're actually doing is setting multiple properties at once, because background is actually a shorthand for several properties. And what it's a shorthand for is background color, background image, background position, and background repeat. Now, in the case of setting background red, we're leaving all of the background image, background position, and background repeat values to their defaults. But we could set each of those individually if we wanted to, saying red and for the background color, URL photo.jpg for the background image. Now, URL is a special function within CSS that allows us to point to a URL. That could be a fully qualified URL, or it could be a local URL, a local relative like you see here. It could be based on the site route. However it is, whatever you have as a valid URL will work in the URL function there. Now, then we have the background position, and finally the background repeat. Background position sets what the position of the background image is with respect to the containing box, and then background repeat sets whether it should repeat at all, like a tiled background, or whether it should only repeat along one axis or neither axis, etc. Incidentally, background position is also shorthand for background position X and background position Y, which handle the positioning of the background image with respect to the X and Y axis. X-axis being the horizontal, Y-axis being the vertical. So it should go in that order when you use background position or when you use it within the background shorthand. Now, most browsers are smart enough that if you were to reverse the keywords and say top and center for background position instead of center top, they will sort that out for you and assign them in the right direction. Where it becomes a problem is if you use unit values such as percentages or pixels or what have you as values for the background positioning, because those will necessarily have to follow the horizontal and then vertical values for those. Now let's jump into the browser and take a look at how to use background. So if we click on this section element, I can go ahead and set a background of red on this element. And then I can change that back to being a background color, so I'm not using the shorthand. Let's do that. And then I can set a background image, and I earlier copied a URL for the eye image for my cuttlefish site. So I can drop that in there. And then I can say that I want the background position to be centered, both horizontally and vertically. And then let's say that I do not want the background to repeat. Now you can kind of see a little bit of red on both sides there where the image has been chopped off. But if I enlarge the size of the element here to 600 by 600 pixels, you can see that the image actually is centered both vertically and horizontally. Now if I turn all of that off, I can actually use the shorthand for all of those values. And you see it does exactly the same thing. Now let's play around a little bit with the positioning. If I set it to top left, I enlarge the browser here. If I set it to top left, you see that the image appears in the top left, as you'd expect. Bottom left, same thing. Bottom right, same thing. And you can see that I'm not using the keywords in their right order. I'm not doing horizontal and then vertical. I'm doing vertical and then horizontal, and the browser's figuring it out. But if I set 0, 0, and I start adjusting them, you'll see that 20 pixels is doing the horizontal, not the vertical. And then if I do 20 pixels again, it does it 20 pixel offset from that left hand and top edge. If I switch them to percentages, the browser actually does something really interesting where it divides up the percentage across the element with respect to the image. So if I set it to 20%, it's going to be 20% across. But if I set it to 100%, it's actually going to be all the way across but not over. So it doesn't just take the left edge. The position actually adjusts as you move across the element the actual offset moves across the image as well so that you never kick the image out of the page. And here you see I can adjust the repeat to allow it to repeat in just one direction, repeat along the x-axis, and I can continue adjusting even above 100%, or I could get ridiculously silly and go really low. And you see it just keeps tiling along that horizontal axis, which is pretty neat. So in this chapter we covered basic backgrounds and went through how the background properties work. In the next chapter we're actually going to dive into more advanced backgrounds and look at how we can adjust the sizing of background images and other fun things like that. So hopefully I'll see you in a few minutes.